Imagine being trapped in the darkness of a remote Afghan mountain valley. Radio traffic is crackling in your ears. Friendly forces are scattered across rough terrain. Enemy fire is coming from multiple directions. Every second matters. You call for air support, trusting that help is on the way. Then, within moments, something goes terribly wrong. What happened on June 9, 2014, would become one of the most tragic friendly fire incidents involving American forces during the war in Afghanistan. 5 American service members lost their lives, an Afghan soldier was killed, and the mission that began as a routine counterinsurgency operation ended in disaster. For years, rumors and dramatic headlines have surrounded the event, with many people asking the same question. How could such a tragedy happen in an era of advanced technology, precision-guided weapons, and sophisticated communication systems? To understand the incident, we need to go back to Afghanistan in 2014. After more than a decade of conflict, American and coalition forces were still conducting operations against insurgent groups across the country. Although international forces were preparing to reduce their presence, dangerous missions continued almost every day. Many of these operations took place in isolated regions where mountainous terrain, limited visibility, and unpredictable conditions created enormous challenges for troops on the ground. One such area was located in Zabul Province, a rugged region known for difficult terrain and insurgent activity. During the night of June 8th and the early morning hours of June 9th, a joint force consisting of American Special Operations personnel and Afghan commandos launched an operation in the region. The mission was part of ongoing efforts to disrupt insurgent networks operating in the area. The soldiers involved were highly trained professionals with extensive experience in combat operations. They had conducted similar missions before and understood the risks associated with operating in hostile territory. At first, the operation appeared to be progressing normally. The joint force moved through challenging terrain while carrying out its objectives. However, as the mission continued, the situation became increasingly complicated. The team encountered resistance, and the environment quickly became more dangerous. Like many combat situations, events began unfolding rapidly, forcing personnel to make critical decisions under intense pressure. As fighting intensified, ground forces requested support from the air. Air support had become an essential part of military operations in Afghanistan. Aircraft equipped with advanced sensors and precision-guided weapons could provide critical assistance to troops facing hostile threats. That night, several aircraft were operating in support of coalition forces, including a United States Air Force B-1B bomber. The aircraft was capable of delivering highly accurate weapons against designated targets. However, precision is only as reliable as the information being provided. A weapon can strike exactly where it is directed, but if the coordinates are incorrect, the consequences can be catastrophic. As the engagement continued, communication traffic increased significantly. Information was moving between personnel on the ground, command elements, and aircraft operating overhead. Every participant was attempting to build an accurate picture of a rapidly changing battlefield. The challenge was made even greater by darkness, difficult terrain, and the presence of both American and Afghan forces operating close to one another. According to the official military investigation, a series of communication problems began affecting the flow of information. Personnel responsible for coordinating air support were working under enormous pressure. In complex combat environments, even experienced operators can struggle to maintain complete situational awareness. Small misunderstandings can develop into larger problems when decisions must be made quickly. As information continued to move through various channels, confusion emerged regarding the exact locations of friendly and hostile forces. Individuals involved in directing air support believed they had identified a legitimate target. However, the information being used to make those decisions was not entirely accurate. Several factors combined to create a situation in which critical assumptions were accepted without sufficient verification. Meanwhile, the troops on the ground remained engaged in a dangerous and stressful situation. Air support was expected to help reduce the threat they faced. The aircraft overhead was prepared to deliver assistance once a target had been confirmed. From the perspective of those involved, they were working to support friendly forces and accomplish the mission successfully. Then came the moment that changed everything. A B-1B bomber released precision-guided weapons towards what was believed to be an enemy position. The strike was intended to support friendly forces engaged in combat. Instead, the bombs impacted the location of friendly personnel. Within seconds, the battlefield was transformed into a scene of devastation. 5 American service members lost their lives. An Afghan soldier was also killed. Several others suffered injuries. The realization that friendly forces had been struck created immediate shock among everyone involved. What had been intended as life-saving support had instead produced one of the deadliest friendly fire incidents of the conflict. News of the tragedy spread quickly throughout military channels. Questions emerged almost immediately. How could such a mistake happen? Were procedures followed correctly? Did someone make a critical error? Could the incident have been prevented? Military investigators began a comprehensive examination of the event. They reviewed communication records, operational reports, testimony from personnel involved, aircraft data, and command procedures. Their goal was not only to determine what happened, but also to identify lessons that could help prevent similar incidents in the future. The findings revealed a complex chain of events rather than a single catastrophic mistake. Investigators concluded that multiple communication failures, incorrect assumptions, situational awareness problems, and coordination issues contributed to the tragedy. No single individual was identified as solely responsible. Instead, the incident resulted from several breakdowns occurring simultaneously during a fast-moving combat operation. One of the most important conclusions involved the role of communication. Information regarding locations, targeting, and battlefield conditions was not always shared clearly or interpreted correctly. In military operations, accurate communication is essential because every decision depends on reliable information. When that information becomes distorted, even advanced technology cannot prevent mistakes. The investigation also challenged some of the dramatic claims that later appeared in public discussions. While many headlines suggested troops were deliberately denied help, publicly available findings did not support the conclusion that military leaders intentionally refused assistance. Instead, investigators described a preventable tragedy caused by confusion and communication failures during a highly stressful operation. This distinction is important because it highlights the difference between deliberate decisions and unintended mistakes occurring in complex combat environments. For military planners and commanders, the incident became a powerful lesson. Modern warfare relies heavily on advanced technology, but technology alone cannot eliminate human error. Aircraft can carry precision-guided weapons. Communication systems can transmit information instantly across great distances. Surveillance equipment can provide detailed imagery, yet every system ultimately depends on people interpreting information correctly and making sound decisions under pressure. Following the investigation, military organizations reviewed procedures related to close air support, target verification, and battlefield coordination. Additional emphasis was placed on communication standards and methods designed to improve situational awareness among personnel operating in complex environments. These efforts reflected a broader commitment to reducing the risk of future friendly fire incidents. Yet, beyond the technical findings and procedural changes, lies the human side of the story. 5 American service members and 1 Afghan soldier lost their lives that morning. Behind every statistic was a family waiting at home. Parents lost children, spouses lost partners, friends and fellow soldiers lost people they cared about deeply. For them, the tragedy was not simply an operational failure discussed in reports and investigations. It was a personal loss that would remain with them forever. More than a decade later, the incident continues to be remembered as a sobering reminder of the realities of war. It demonstrates how quickly situations can change and how small mistakes can combine to produce devastating consequences. It also reminds us that many of history's most tragic events are not the result of a single decision, but rather a series of failures occurring at exactly the wrong time. The story of June 9, 2014 is ultimately about more than military procedures and battlefield technology. It is a story about the challenges faced by people operating under extraordinary pressure. It is a story about the importance of communication, accountability, and continuous learning. More importantly, it is a story about the lives that were lost and the lessons that emerged from a tragedy no one intended. While the events of that night can never be changed, understanding them helps ensure that the sacrifices of those who died are remembered and that future generations continue working to prevent similar tragedies from happening again.